to the end of the year send-off. Today, we're going to be talking about the 10 best cards that were printed into Pioneer this year that you probably should add to your collection for staples. Also, we're going to be talking about some few honorable mentions that are, one, a card that got a card ban, other, I think, is actually one of the better cards, and also one is just my favorite card of the year. So, if you like this kind of stuff, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, hit that notification for future videos. We're on our way to 2,000 subs. Let's get there in the new year, and let me know in the comment section what you guys think about what is your best card of the year. I am curious to see how much of our stuff overlap. And I'm sorry I didn't make this video. It should probably drop way before now, but I was a little bit sick yesterday, so I didn't record this video and the video that I recorded after this, which is the competitive adjustment. So it's not going to look the same as last week for that one. Sorry, it's going to be airing literally right after this. So let's get into the top 10. So my honorable mentions is Bane Ripper. It did get Storm banned. I don't think it's necessarily that great of a card, but it kind of reflects in the fact that it sees no play now, right? Soren got banned, then the card is just kind of gone, right? So it was more a reflection of how busted Soren was, and Vayne Ripper was just a very good Magic card when it comes to getting cheated out on turn 3. But even if you see stuff like the reanimation decks, like you don't see Vayne Ripper is not as that good of a reanimation card. So like I said, it's on here for the particular same exact reason that a card later I think is going to be similar, but it was in the best deck at the time. Soren got banned, now the card is gone. Overlord of the Mistmores, I think is the second best Overlord of the cycle. It sees a decent amount of play in Incarnation, also in Zur Overlords, so it's a pretty good card. I guess you could call it Domain in Pioneer, but overall, pretty good card. I think it's just one of the best cards this year. I think it's honestly the 11th best card of the year. Charm is probably my favorite card of the year. It's definitely really amped up the decks that I like, which are decks that are built around Castle Lochwain, also the Cave. So in that regard, it's pretty nice to be able to have a thing that just gets any land that I want, puts into play tapped, and I really like that aspect of it. Overall, it's at a great power level for Standard and Pioneer. I get some people might not be a huge fan of this, but for me, like I said, it's my favorite card of the year. You also could argue that Screaming Nemesis is with it, but overall, I think Archdruid's Charms was a better positive for more of my favorite decks. So that is the honorable mentions. We have top 10. Let's get into them. I am now offering Patreon and locals content exclusive. It includes sideboard guides, budget guides, exclusive videos, as well as other types of content. If you want to check out, the link is in the description. Now, let's get back into the video. So number 10 on my list is Artist's Talent. It's a 1 and a red. This card has been picked up in mainly Izzet Phoenix. That's the only deck that you could arguably say has gotten improvement from the Artist's Talent pickup. The other deck that pseudo has picked it up is Lotus Field. But so far, I have not had an adequate amount of testing against the deck to know if it actually is better than the previous variant with Emergent Ultimatum. Overall, I think I have a pretty much unbeaten win rate against this new deck. But it's only like a sample size of 4, I think. So overall, I'm like 4-0 against it. It doesn't seem as good. It seems pretty clunky overall, and like it doesn't seem like it just auto wins like the previous version. So yes, this card has definitely made has been a staple in Izzet Phoenix, because I think it does better at not being all in on the actual graveyard, right? Because if you deal with something like the extra turn spell in the copy effect, like it was much more vulnerable to graveyard hate. This one, like you have a backup plan. I mean, you could easily level this thing out and maybe burn your opponent out. So, and plus you could dig for stuff like Crackling Drake and stuff like that. So even if you are getting your graveyard exiled, like you still technically can operate and function and find cards that actually are relevant in a matchup. So overall, I think this card has been a net positive for Phoenix. I'm on the leaning towards it's been a negative for Lotus Field. But if you're a Lotus Field player, let me know in the comment section. But so far, that deck has seemed much worse than the previous iteration. But let's get number 9 on my list. So Ygritte, Eater of All. 3 in a black and a green. Basically, this was picked up in Jun Sack. basically is an infinite combo with 2 cats, one in the yard, one in one play. You just sack them, drain, 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 drain. Of course, this is vulnerable to graveyard hate, but even with graveyard hate, like, you're not mad, right? Because you just get a nice chunky body as a backup plan. So you could also argue that Scavenger's Talent should be right in the slot as well. That is definitely another card that has hugely impacted that deck of assembling its combo pieces much more efficiently and stronger. But overall, Yeager definitely is the card that gives the deck an extra way of attacking. You could just always just cast a 5-mana 6/6. You're not like happy about it if you're planning on using this for the beatdown plan through graveyard hate, but you're still a plan nonetheless. So that's kind of why I put this one over the Scavenger's Talent, even though Scavenger's Talent, I think, is right here with it. Honestly, it's probably the second best talent behind Artist Talent. So that's number 9 on my list. Let's get to number 8. No More Lies. The new mana leak, or new-ish mana leak from Murder the Coward Manor. 1 white and a blue. Basically, it's mana leak, but if the spell gets countered this way, it gets exiled. Just a good, solid counter spell. One of the better ones in the format. Of course, there's also the Spree one, which is fine. It's definitely not better than this. But it definitely helped out Dimir midrange, or Dimir control. So in that regard, it's a little bit better because it can see play in more control decks than this one can, because this one's strictly limited to Orzhov, versus the other one is really anything that's blue-based. And sometimes you even see it in ramp decks as 2 copies of, just because it also can copy something, which you have your green shell turtle, and you're able to copy that and get a little bit of card advantage out of it too. So like the other card has a lot more versatility than this one. But I think this one, pound for pound, is a better counter spell if you're strictly looking at a counter spell, because it's efficient and overall it's just really good. So let's get to number 7. So Mockingbird has been on the rise when it comes to its actual play rate. Now, this card has seen play in 2 top-tier decks now. One is Dimir Ninjas, and the other deck, of course, is Orzhov Humans, which has been on the rise for the past 2 weeks. It has, I think, actually a pretty reasonable win rate against Rakdos Demons, which is arguably the best deck by a huge margin. So, overall, this has been a good addition to the format, because not only does it copy your Thalia's Lieutenant, not really your Thalia, but also your other Lord. You also could just copy a 1-drop if you really wanted to, which you're not really upset about. And in Ninjas, this often copies Fairy Miscreant as a way to pseudo just get 8 copies of Fairy Miscreant, so that we draw a bunch of cards off of them keep coming down. So that's really nice. You also could argue from that deck, there's also the new Merfolk, but that card is only really played in that one deck. This one is played in 2 decks that are both really good right now. So, which is why this one made it and the Merfolk did not. Let's get to number 6. Number 6 on my list is Sheltered by Ghost. This new aura-based removal spell has done a decent amount of damage. It's seen some play in stuff like Heroic, also Bogle, also basically Boros aggro, and etc. So this card is showing up, and the reason for it is because, well, for one, it's a huge tempo play on your behalf, because you make your threat harder to answer, so that's really nice. It's also an enchantment, which could be relevant in certain decks, like you don't really have an Enchantress deck, but yeah. We also have the ability to make your thing have War 2, which really increases the ability for your creature not to die by removal as well, and gaining lifelink, which is a huge tempo positive for life totals against an aggro deck. Overall, this card was, I think, my second pick from Duskmourn, which overall had a lot of power behind it. Even though if it really wasn't my ideal favorite set of the year, but I think this card is really good. You're probably going to end up seeing a lot of Duskmourn on this top 10, because a lot of the most powerful cards from the year came from that set. Let's get number 5. So number 5 is Heartfire Hero. You could be asking, why isn't the other Emberheart Challenger on this list instead? Overall, I think the reason being is the Rakdos Prowess deck is built around this card, not really Emberheart. So overall, I think that this actually makes the cut. That one doesn't, because of the fact that the deck is built around sacking your threat and, flinging it, which Hero is much better at. Overall, I think that, and this is one of the few cards that actually had to have a Alchemy revision, so keep that in mind. The Emberheart Challenger wasn't strong enough to require that, This one was. They ended up making it a 0-1. So, because of the fact this card is so good that they had to actually revise it in Alchemy, tells me this is actually the by far the more superior card of the two. So, the mice are built around this deck. Like I said, the flings of decks, which are the pseudo, you pump it, then you fling it at the very end after second main phase. Usually it's the hero is the one you always are trying to pivot around when it comes to blocking, when it comes to auras, instant speed, pump spells and stuff. You don't really honestly care about the Emberheart Challenger. You're more than willing to just chump the Challenger and hopefully see if they have Monstrous Rage. Hero is the one that you're scared of. So let me know in the comment section if you guys disagree with any of these takes. Plus, they also help with the algorithm. So I want engagement. Let me know in the comment section where you think I'm going wrong. What cards would you have considered so far that's not been, maybe hasn't been talked about yet? But if there's something you think I missed, let me know in the comment section. I'm trying to address, I think, most of the cards people will come up with while I go through these slides. So, number 4 is FOMO. One in a red, 2/3, basically ETBs. You go ahead and rummage. And then if you have Delirium, you get to get an extra combat phase with kind of one creature, unless your creatures have Vigilance. So this card has spawned multiple decks, right? It's one of the core staples in Marzu Fang, right? And seeing play there. Seeing play in Rakdos midrange. And it also sees play in one of my decks that has become a huge part of my channel, which is Gruul Delirium. So this card has become kind of a ridiculous card. Even if you exclude the Delirium's text, a 2-mana, 2/3 that rummages is a solid body. It also is an enchantment, which could be relevant. And rummage is kind of like an all-in-one package. You're just trying to find the best cards from your deck. So overall, I think this actually is one of the best cards from the year, which is why it's number 4. And you might argue with me that this shouldn't be on here up this high, but honestly, based off of what I've played with and played against, this is one of the better cards. It's actually probably, in a lot of decks, is better than Bloodtithe Harvester, which is a solid 2-drop for Rakdos midrange. Which is why when people say they think that Bloodtithe Harvester should be banned instead of Fable and the Mirror Breaker, I just kind of laugh it off because, this card just kind of just gives you what you want. You could easily replace a Bloodtithe Harvester. Fable, on the other hand, is just too good. It's just way too good. But overall, this card is really strong. That's why it's number 4. Let's get number 3. So Overlord of the Hauntwoods. 3 and a green. Basically, you can impend 4. And then it just ETBs you or attacks. You get basically a domain land with every type. So this card has seen play in a lot of different decks. It was, I think, seeing a little bit of testing with Mono Green Devotion. You also could argue that, of course, the Cowboy from OTJ also could be on this list. The 4/2 that whenever you cast a creature with 4 or more or greater power, you draw a card, which is an outstanding card for Mono Green Devotion. And I really liked it in my Path of Power deck. So it definitely gives you a huge reward for playing big, high-powered threats. But that card has been restricted to one deck almost. This card, of course, sees play in the Overlord deck, plus it also sees play in Incarnation. Also, I think it was tested in Mono Green Devotion, like I said earlier. Plus, I also think it's really good in just traditional stock ramp decks, which I play a lot of on my channel. So I've been playing a lot more and more Gruul ramp, and I think actually the deck has gotten to a spot where it's actually pretty good into the current meta. But it's kind of a little bit about, because this card was printed, a 3-mana get any type basic land really does help. Just ramp us, make sure we have our red mana. In that deck, we don't really care about the domain part. We just care about the actual, it being a dual land, dual stomping ground for me. But overall, this card is just insane. It basically is the enabler a lot of the time for Leyline Binding, which is just a really strong card. So overall, definitely the best of the cycle. And yeah, it definitely deserves the number 3 slot. So number 2 on my list is Slickshot Show Off. 1 in a red, basically a way better Kiln Fiend that has haste and flying. And you get to plot it so you can cast it at a later turn. This is definitely a way better card than Emberheart Challenger is. So this card definitely is the core of most aggro decks, especially since you can plot it on 2 and wait for the correct turn to actually just go full face. So it's great in burn for that reason in general. So you don't necessarily need to use pump spells with this card. Also, it is a wizard, which is amazing in mono red prowess. which is also, some variants are the wizard variants. So this has multiple important factors added into this card. And overall, this is definitely one of the best cards printed this year. That's why it's number 2, of course. But there's still one more card to talk about, which is the best card I think printed in a long time. So overall, this card is really strong. Definitely worth picking it up if you can. Add 4 copies to your collection if you're planning on playing any kind of aggro deck in Pioneer. This card is definitely sees play across the board. I think even some heroic decks play it. I mean, also, of course, like I said, you got Burn, you got Prowess, so every deck kind of just wants this because it's very explosive and can deal a lot of damage very fast. And plus, if you pawn it against a lot of mid-range decks, they have to really think about how they're piloting the turns, because they may only have 1 Fatal Push. They can't just immediately answer your Swift Spear that you have on board. You have 3 Swift Spears attacking, or whatever like that, and that's plotted. They can't just answer a Swift Spear and take the replications that you're just going to get this show off to hit. So, like, it definitely changes your opponent's play patterns, which is kind of what you want in aggro. So let's go to number 1. So number 1 is Unholy Annex. You also could argue that the Caretaker's talent was really strong. The Enduring Innocence also is really strong when it comes to card advantage engines. But this one, overall, has been the best card printed since Fable the Mirror Breaker. It's actually just, I think, the second best card. One of the top 5 best cards in Pioneer right now. Overall, I mean, this card is actually, I would think, warrants more of a ban than Treasure Cruise right now, which is saying a lot, because Treasure Cruise is just a ancestral recall. But turns out, if you're just draining your opponent for 2 and easily also drawing a card every single turn, while also having the ability just to make a 6/6 demon that closes out the game, that's not that bad, right? Overall, this is definitely the best room by a huge margin. This definitely is the room that carries the deck. And yeah, overall, I think this card is insane. It works really good with Mutavolt, which actually got me to the point where we're talking about it one day on stream. And we're talking about it. One of my people in chat mentioned, should Volt be banned? The minute I thought I was actually partaking in it, because I know how good it is with this, and I thought for a second that it was played in Rakdos Prowess, and I thought that could be a way to hit both decks with 1 hit. Both decks are taking up a reasonable chunk of the Pioneer metagame. So that'll be the next video that should be dropping in a little bit. Probably the exact same time, I don't know, but I gotta get off here, get that recorded, so they can go up at a reasonable time today before the new year starts. And I'll talk to you guys next year, where we'll be playing a decent amount of sweet decks. What cards would you want to see be printed next year? Let me know in the comment section. I was really kind of sad that we didn't get some cards that I was hoping for, especially in something like Foundations. It was kind of sad that they didn't reprint Siege Rhino, which is arguably like one of the most fan favorite cards of all time. So that would have been a huge, nice throwback. And I actually would have tried Standard just to play Siege Rhino. But, you know, you can't always win them all. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Shout out to all my supporters. And if you want to see any other content from me, check out either one of these 2 videos and playlists. And I'll talk to you soon.